KWT slaying.
Salama family, salama, how y'all doing today? Hope you're blessed and highly favored. Today we're going to have a few guests with us. We're going to be talking about Berlin Conference 2.0. One of our guests is Sister Shonda. Sister Shonda, say hello to the family.
Grace and peace, family. Hope your weekend is well.
So we're waiting on two more. Everybody running late today. I guess this is one of those busy times, right?
Everybody but me. I'm on time. No, I'm kidding.
You're like me. Most of the time, I'm on time. 99% of the time, I'm on time. I don't run BP time. You know, I know some of us run BP time. I don't run BP time.
I know, right? Oh, yeah. But no, we love the fan. We love the fan. We know life happens. It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's like I was talking to my wife, and you know, I was talking about how some of our people in Africa on BP time. I say, yeah, that's where we get it from. You know, we get it from Africa. Like, you know what they say,
right.
Akuna Matata.
Akuna Matata. That's a, ain't nothing wrong with that. See, I'm trying to get some Akuna Matata in my life. You understand what I'm saying?
Exactly. Brother Karis, Akuna Matata, how you doing?
Yeah, Akuna Matata. Look, I was trying my best. I said, okay, because my son plays competitive soccer, so his game, especially here in Florida, his game gets rained out. And it was on a delay, but I finally made it back. So, you know, glad to be here, you know, at this time. So shalom, everyone. So sorry I'm late.
You're cold, but this when you know this when you know BP time is up. See, what had happened was,
yeah, you know, I'm trying to make all these excuses. Listen, I don't even care. Look, I don't care because he scored the game-winning goal, and there's a lot of long faces that had to drive back to Orlando because of his game-winning goal. And I said, that's the way you do it, son. That's the way you do
it. That's it.
If you're gonna do it, it's good to win.
Yep.
That's it. That's right.
So I'm gonna share the video, family. We had a video that we were talking about and about Berlin. I titled it Berlin Conference 2.0. I have my opinions on some of this stuff, but like based upon the way things are, there would end up being a Berlin Conference 2.0. But based upon the prophecies, I don't see it happening, right? But based upon the natural political events, we're headed that way, and you know, that's one of the things we were talking about, and we wanted to discuss this on the show with the family. Mm-hmm. So before I share this video, do y'all have any comments first?
You know, it's so crazy because
we don't hear you, Sister Shonda. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Okay. I was saying it was crazy because I had seen the video the night before, and I was talking with my husband, and I was like, you see, this is what they keep from us. Now, you know, we're able to see and be exposed to these things more now, but this is how.
Yeah, she's trying to cutting out.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Cut out for a second.
I'm trying to do this in the back, but I might have to go to the front. I was saying, you know, this is how they've been forever. Just, you know, talking among themselves about what they do to steal from us and keeping us in the dark about our own greatness, keeping us in the dark about our own resources. So it was funny because I had seen it the night before and then you shared it. And I was like, look at this. They're being exposed for the whole world to see how they really feel about us.
You have any comments on that, Karis?
Well, yeah, and the funny thing is, just to go off of what Sister Shonda was saying, you're seeing that their resources are drying up, and now they're trying to go somewhere else to reestablish those resources, grain, water, right, and even people. So now we're looking at things in this cycle. And now in this cycle, it's a much harder time for them because we can start to see what it is that they've tried to hide from us, right? Well, don't worry about Africa. Africa is just, mud huts and all this other stuff. And then people from Africa, they're like, what are they talking about mud huts? What are you talking about S-hole countries? You see this?
Yeah.
It's like, and it's a shame because now, where's the S-hole country? You have water in Jackson, Mississippi that looks like doo-doo water. No, man, I'd rather get some water in Africa. That thing looks a little bit cleaner than what's coming out them pipes.
I know.
No.
Well, that's the other thing. I was listening to a health professional and talking about our water, and he was saying the water here that we drink is dead, right? And they were talking about this machine that you can use to make it alive. I'm like, well, in the continent, you ain't got to worry about that. It's already alive, But
Right.
everything they do to us, they treat us like children, right? And I'm gonna be honest, a lot of us on the continent act like children, right? We're too trusting, right?
Mhm.
And you got the I don't want to say it because I might get blocked, but you got the pedos who basically coming to Africa, coming to the continent and say, hey, little boy, hey, little girl, do you want some candy? Can I tell you, I'm a missionary. You want some candy? But they pedos, right? And they manipulate and they abuse all the people on the continent because we're too trusting, right? We got to get past that.
We're way too trusting, and
Yeah.
I think it's us on a DNA level, and that's the problem, right? Like in their DNA tends to be towards deception at all costs, smiling in your face, pretending, that pretense, just like you spoke about.
Yeah.
But we're so real, like we wear our heart on our sleeve. That's the problem. So
Exactly.
we got to learn how to play poker or something.
I'm just waiting on Karis to sing the song. They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. The backstabbers.
Yeah, exactly. But I was looking at a comment from Stepping Stones to Home. Instead of Poland Springs, they're gonna have Kilimanjaro Springs and sell that thing at $10,000 a case.
Yes.
Make
Minister
some money
Tayu.
real quick.
Welcome, Minister Tayu. Any comment?
Salam, my family. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you good.
Peace and blessings.
Yeah. They tell us go back to Africa, and we say, okay. They like, I didn't mean it. You really don't have to. I didn't think you would want to do that, because you have all the resources, and we know if you go back, you're gonna shut it all down. And I'm like, for sure. I'm like, my people gonna come first, right? And that's what we need to do. We need to, identify and call a spade a spade. We can't be ashamed to call an enemy if we got a history of that behavior, and they shamed us in Eurocentric doctrine to feel like we're sinning when we identify who's our enemy, when the Bible already told us who's our enemy, And I think we have to be bold enough to speak it. If you killing me in the street and I'm not getting no justice, and you take me to court, and your legal system is so abusive, I have to call you what you are, And I think worldwide we have to get that mindset. We need to identify who's on our side and who's not.
But you're racist, Minister Tayu. You're racist. Like Pastor Darby said. Well, maybe I am.
Well, all I need to do is I could go back and just grab some photos. You coming out of your church smiling, hanging us from trees. I could show you that. I could show you your evidence, right, of your postcards of those events. I could show you evidence where you kept mementos of our people's fingers and ears and stuff. And to this day, instead of you getting rid of it, it's in your grandpa's locker. You know what I'm saying? There's way too much out there going on, and I'm like, you have to. They have to stop shaming us. One thing Eurocentric doctrine did was shame us. It made us feel like if we spoke against those who have been oppressing us, we were the bad guys. That's over.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna share the video that we were discussing, and I got some other stuff I'm gonna share as well as we continue. So here we go. It is. There we go.
You get the idea. Nigeria's oil is worth a lot.
Hold on. I got double play right here. Hold on. What's going on here? Hold on, fam. That's not how it's supposed to work. Let's see.
More and more African children are going back into school and
It's not right.
education and improving hygiene practices, which help with stopping the
I think that audio sound a little low as well.
That's the wrong. I don't know where this thing is playing from.
Close trading connections to Europe.
Hold on, I gotta close some of these browsers. This is
The east coast of Africa has access to the Indian Ocean.
this
which,
is
with the
not
ongoing
the
rise
instance
of
that
the
should be
Chinese
playing.
and Indian economies, could become the new center of
Hold
global
on,
trade.
hold on. All right, so this. All right, there we go. Hold on. I had to close some of this stuff. All right, I had some of this stuff out of sequence. I didn't realize that. All right, so let's do this. All right.
But I want to tell you today, Africa has the resources, the ability, and the people to grow into an economic superpower. It is the richest continent already in terms of natural resources. 30% of the world's cobalt, diamonds, gold, and iron are in Africa. Africa also has huge wealth in oil. Nigeria produces more than 2.5 million barrels of oil per day. On the global market, one barrel is worth around $52. You can do the maths, but you get the idea. Nigeria's oil is worth a lot. Africa already has a booming pharmaceutical industry, and huge progress is being made in fighting back against disease and infections in African countries. More and more African children are going back into school and are being provided with education and improving hygiene practices, which help with stopping the spread of disease. Africa is ideally located for global dominance in trade, with close trading connections to Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. The east coast of Africa has access to the Indian Ocean, which, with the ongoing rise of the Chinese and Indian economies, could become the new center of global trade. And unlike many countries in the West, including Britain, Africa is not saddled with debt. The British debt is 87% of the British GDP, while the African debt
All right, let me mute that right quick while that goes through.
is only 9% of their GDP. All but 2 countries in Africa could pay off their debt within 1 year. So the potential is already there, and the growth is already beginning. Even now, Africa is the continent in the world with the fastest economic growth. The GDP per capita of sub-Saharan Africa is expected to rise by 800% from 2020 to 2050. Anyone who doubts Africa can make quick economic progress like this should look at the economic history of the US. In 1977, the US economy was the same size as the African economy is today. And since then, the American economy has grown by a massive $18.419 trillion. And with Africa having more natural resources than the US, its progress in the next 40 years could be even more spectacular. So if you're someone here today who thinks that Africa will never catch
That's as loud as they can get, fam.
up with the rest of the world, I want to say that you will be proved wrong. With its mammoth population, massive potential, and amazing stores of resources, within your lifetime, Africa will become an economic superpower. Thank you.
So Africa will become an economic superpower which we all know already. Which to be honest with you, these type of conferences are not just for informative purposes, right? This is to let the establishment know and the colonizers know it's time for Berlin Conference 2.0. It's time to come and steal some more oil. It's time to steal some more gold. It's time to do a lot of this. Now, before I show this article, let's get a comment from the panel about that. What do you all think about that little child and his commentary on Africa being a superpower? Because you all know they don't want us to be a superpower. They don't want us to have a dollar. They don't want us to have a dime. They don't want us to have a penny. They want us to continue to be servants. They want to suck up all our resources and control Africa. It's not going to happen according to the scriptures. But what's your thoughts?
Well, I like to say it may be a response to the awakening, right? And they have to tell their elite community, pay attention, things are changing. These people are woke, and because they're woke, it's not like we didn't have those resources. Like Africa wasn't always the land of milk and honey and plenty, right? Which tells you, it's a biblical land, right? Because it is the most prosperous land probably on the planet, right? So, but what they have done and what they continue to do is, although we have the resources, let's say for Ghana, let's say for Zimbabwe, Congo. Like I was watching a video and I saw the little Congo kids, getting all the coltan and all of that, barely having anything to live on, barely having a hut, getting these resources for the Western powers, right? And they've been doing this for decades, if not centuries, at least for decades, since the technology has improved. But what they do is, like, let's say you have, like Zimbabwe, they printed those gold coins and they want to put it on the market and put it out for sale. Well, what they'll do is we don't acknowledge and recognize your gold coin, even though it's pure gold. We don't recognize your coltan if you're selling it, but if you give it to us for pennies on the dollar, we'll acknowledge it. But if you try to bring us those resources for your community to grow, right, and make a reasonable profit, we're not going to acknowledge it. So even though you have the gold, the coltan, the silver, right, the uranium, because their system is the technological, because they control the economic system, they can determine whether or not your product, your assets, your resources have any value. So even though you full of the most wealthy minerals and assets on the planet, they can keep you poor by saying, well, it's just a rock unless we say it's not a rock. Your gold is just a rock unless we say it's not a rock. But then they go get the gold, put it on the trading market, and make millions and billions.
Well,
right?
Try to keep that coltan and gold and all that stuff from them. Let them say it ain't worth nothing and see how they do. You're gonna have 100 million soldiers on the continent of Africa trying to take it from you. Look, if Africa withheld that, they're gonna be sending the military to occupy.
Well, they will, because they can't function without it, right? So they will try to control the continent. What they've been trying to do is control the continent through the United Nations. The United Nations is a system in place that's meant to control world resources and keep it in the hands of the 1%. That's the purpose of the United Nations. It's not for world peace. It's for the management and control of resources, that they may maintain power, right? But see, when the Negroes on the continent and worldwide wake up to the fact that they are sitting on wealth, that they are the ones who should call the shots, that's when the whole continent will be Wakanda. That's when the migration is going to reverse, and the Europeans are going to want to come to Africa to work. It's not going to be Africans going to Europe and America. It's going to be Americans and Europeans and Chinese going to Africa, because that's where the action is. That's where the resources are. So our biggest problem right now is that the people of the continent don't understand the game. So their leaders can't make bold decisions or bold moves, because they'll just get removed and replaced, right? So once the people worldwide and the diaspora plus those on the continent understand how the game is played, then and know who the enemy is, right? You can make proper decisions. You can support your leader. You can make sure the subversive groups that come on your continent can't be successful. But that requires everyone understanding the game, right? Everyone knowing what's going on and how they've been exploiting the continent all this time, right? And once we understand that, we sit on we're the ones sitting on the throne at that point. And I think that's where we're going. I think that's how the Most High has it set up for when we return, that we're going to be calling the shots, because you see Ezekiel 38 at some point, we obviously controlling the resources, and Ezekiel 38 clearly says they come to take a spoil, meaning they're not getting enough of what they want, so they coming to take it. So
Sister Shauna, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, I saw this from a little bit of a different perspective, and I really love and appreciate what you said, Minister Tayu. But I looked at the person who was doing the speaking. I looked at the fact that this was a young man, maybe, somewhere between 13 to 16 years old. And I thought to myself, it's interesting how the elites prepare their children to understand how economy works. It's very interesting that they prepare their children to understand how to colonize and continue on the legacy in which they've done for millennia. But when it comes to educating our children, they want us to educate our children in LGBT. They want us to educate our children in European, all things European, and lift and raise those things up as though those things are the symbol, the status of success. So I thought, when I was looking at this, I said, this is preparation. This young person is being prepared alongside of his counterparts for continuing on with the family legacy and keeping our family, keeping our people ignorant. He spoke specifically about the educational system in Africa and how Africans are gaining more understanding, more knowledge, the young people. That's a threat. He was saying it, and he was letting them know, it's a threat to us. It's a threat that they would be educated. It's a threat that they would have an understanding of how to become a superpower. And if we don't take advantage of it, then they're going to monopolize the world, as they should, as the continent should, and should have already done so. But they've been preparing this young man for many years to understand how to take over this colonialist rule, which has been going on for millennia. I was listening to Professor Black, and he was talking about how we get really excited when we talk about, okay, well, the European nations, they're all dwindling in numbers, right? They're all being minimized in numbers. He said, but that doesn't mean as much to them as you think it does. Because if you have a majority of melanated people, particularly if you have a majority of Israelite people who don't understand who they are, their mindset is still in the place of subservience and still calling these Europeans Your Highness. That's what they're looking at. They're looking at the fact that we continue to look at them as though they are the dominant society, rather than preparing ourselves and our youth to understand that we are actually the ones that have everything that they need in order for them to continue to prosper in a colonialist world. So I looked at it from that position. I don't know, what you guys' thoughts are about that, but that's initially the first thing I saw.
One thing I definitely agree with is that child was pretty much saying, y'all have to get control of their education. Y'all have to stop them from waking up, because they're going to realize that they are a wealthy continent and they are rich, and that we cannot subvert and take their resources like we've been doing. So we have to do something now. That's how I took it, just like you were saying. Brother Karras, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I looked at it the same way that Ashonda looked at it, especially with indoctrination. And indoctrination right now for them is falling apart because there's a thing called the internet, right? And truth be told, even though this started off, right, this was unpopular, right? This was not popular at all 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? What are you saying? How can you be the people? How can you do this? How can you do that? Well, this is where it is, and this is what I found so far, and this is history that is even in European museums talking about us. And it talked about how we were thrown from that land. Because why? Because for those 2,000 years, they have been able to put in a pawn or some sort of subservient, you know, technocrat or autocrat or whatever you want to call it. We have it as the boule here in America, but they've done the same thing over in that land for the last 2,000 years. And so right now, this is a time that they've never experienced, because the whole thing with this awakening is when you are reestablishing the understanding of who you are. And not just the reestablishing of who you are, but now of what resources for them they've had under their feet this whole time that they haven't had access to. Who would want to walk around in a dirt road when they are just as rich and probably the richest and the wealthiest in the world, but they're not able to access that in a positive economic trade manner, right? That, what do we call that here in the United States? There's a trade imbalance, right? They get mad if China ones up the US with their whole trade imbalance. Oh, it's time to go to war. You see what they did? It's a trade imbalance. You know, but here's the thing, this trade scale has been so imbalanced that now when they've been saying, look, we're taking back over the mines, we're taking back over the industry, we're doing this, we're doing that. And they're like, well, you can't kick out France, we're gonna come back. And now, how can France come back when the oil's shut off? You see what I'm saying? These countries' oil, transportation has been squandered. Unless they're going to build some big old sailboats. Do you see what I'm saying? Unless they're going to start getting some big old paper airplanes and kites. They're now having a tough time in the transportation of getting to where they used to go. And everything that they have in terms of that mechanism of transit has now been encased with some sort of an oil engine. They're going to try and get there, what, nuclear? Not really. Coal, steam, steam? Probably not. So now in this time, as everything is really lining up in the negative for them, now there's a people that understand, oh man, we know who we are, because now we've been waking up here in the diaspora, particularly America, and that has been the sounding board for the continent, whether we want to admit it or not.
Well, one thing I could say is they need to get the diaspora back, right? Because we know how these people move, right? We're ready for the fight. You know, we're tired of it. We've been oppressed for over 400 years. It's time for it to end. You know how they say, you know, y'all want some smoke? We got that smoke, right? And when it comes to this whole New World Order, Western power, Roman Empire system, right? We know who our enemy is, right? And let's call a spade a spade. And the thing is, we're gonna find out that uh, as we move along, the Most High is gonna move people out and move people in, right? Some of those African leaders who are sellouts, they're gonna be moved out, and the Most High is gonna put righteous leaders in, because Israel is the true Israelites are coming back to power. Now, I want to share this article. Russia hits the gold mine in Uganda. The African country of Uganda is in the limelight again, and this time it is literally shining gold. Good news is piling up for Uganda. The country has recently announced the discovery of a deposit of 31 million tons of gold ore, with extractable pure gold estimated to gross 320,000 tons. The discovered gold is expected to mine the country in excess of a whopping 12 trillion. If you're facing difficulty processing how exorbitant the amount is, then let me help you. The amount is approximately 4 times India's annual GDP. Uganda has also recently witnessed a boost in foreign investments owing to the fresh discovery of hydrocarbon resources in its western region of the border with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Perhaps the good days for the landlocked country have started. Russian connection. The major issue African countries face, even after the presence of valuable minerals and metals under their soil, is the unavailability of technology and capital for extraction. Major developed countries with the appropriate means are known to have considerable interest in African countries, majorly due to their resources. Moscow has maintained strong relations with Kampala. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni did call Russia's Europe center of gravity and expressed strong support for the Kremlin amid the ongoing war. The EU's and Biden's disregard for the African nations has placed the West in an unstrategic position there. Due to their broad disregard for the food security and inflation problems in African nations, Biden and his minions have lost all political clout in Africa. A master strategist like Putin would never have missed this chance to solidify his position. Putin's master stroke. Biden has done the damage, and it is time for Putin to come into the picture and take steps to strengthen the already powerful Russian economy. Russia's master stroke to control a big chunk of the commodity market of the world is making Moscow unbeatable and irreplaceable. Uganda's reserves and Moscow's interest in the region would be a demonstration of a show of strength in this time of crisis. Russia's interest in Uganda is not newfound. Russian investors backed the first gold refinery in Uganda more than 10 years ago. The refinery, established by Russian-owned Victoria Gold Star Limited, has a capacity to process 1.2 tons of raw gold per month, the company's managing director told Reuters. Of late, Russia has also taken advantage of loopholes in sanctions and has strategically used its humongous 140 billion gold reserves to hold down its economic fort. You see, gold is more of an elixir for Russia right now. Since Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, the Russian state has been constantly working hard to steer its economy against the impact of sanctions. One avenue to do so was to increase its gold reserves, as gold tends to soar in times of conflict. Putin also understands that the West cannot just sanction commodities such as crude oil, grain, and gold because they would have severe repercussions on the global order. This is precisely why Moscow is all set to assist Uganda in its future mining endeavors and parallelly, so is that even a word, parallelly? Solidify its stronghold on the commodities trade. Africa in general and Uganda in particular would soon become one of the strongest allies of Russia. I'm going to play this video, but I want to get y'all comments on this whole relationship with Moscow. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And do you think they're going from the frying pan into the fire? That's the question.
Well, I'll comment. I would say historically, Russia has helped African nations. Right now, they weren't colonizers, but maybe that's because they didn't have opportunity. But I mean, if we look at history, Russia consistently helped Africa. It helped like Kenya during the Mau Mau rebellion. They helped South Africa during their war. So they have a history of helping African nations. But also, if you look at Putin's value system, Putin is anti-decadence, right? He's more traditional family kind of person. Not saying he's a believer really, but his value system is more conservative and traditional. The African people have a tradition, a traditional family belief system that's contrary to what Europe is pushing. So the African leaders see more opportunities with Russia and China because of those conservative values, right? So I think they see that window of opportunity. Like if you've been, dealing with a bully at school and no one's big enough to deal with the bully, but then someone comes in and he becomes your friend, and next thing you know, you have someone standing by your side against the bully, right? So the African leaders I mean, they have looked out for themselves because they didn't have too many options, right? The options is go along or lay down, as they said, with Raleigh, my Lambo is blue. Lay down or get going, right? And so they didn't have too many options. I'm not saying they're not corrupt, but they didn't have a lot of options. But to go along with the system to protect themselves. Because when I see some of these leaders and I've listened to them, sometimes they sound like they want to do something for their people, but then they make maneuvers and it's like, well, you look like a daggone globalist to me. But other times they make moves like they really want to do something. So it's a little confusing as to their motivations, but I know they can't take on the giant by themselves. And so even when you look at South Africa, even though South Africa has a lot of similarities to Western nations, they choose to not offend Russia. Even, they have some good relationships and contracts and money that comes in from Russia as well, but their moral value system is more in line with Russia than the decadence of the West.
I think it's interesting that you brought up Uganda, as I was literally just thinking about Uganda, and particularly with Terrence. I think that's his name, Terrence Howard, the actor. That he had gone there. Did y'all see that he had gone over to speak to the president of Uganda about some technological advance that he was trying to present to the nation on behalf of the United States? Did y'all catch that video?
Who went over there?
Terrence Howard. He's an actor.
Oh, Terrence, yeah. Some people say he was just being the middleman for the U.S. What do you think about that?
Exactly. And so my thing is, like, when it comes to money, money makes people very funny, right? And you can't really trust anybody. I think, when it comes to this whole situation with Putin, that it's a power play. Putin is a very wise and strategic player. And he's not going to play his cards in the same direction, at least from what I can see, as the majority of his European counterparts. I would say European because he's white, right? But he's not going to, play his cards in that same direction. He comes off as though he's very apathetic to African plight, as though he's very concerned beyond, most European nations that just, hide their hand. He actually puts forth the effort to show that he's concerned. But again, to me, it's still a power play because he wants to be the superpower of the world. And so in the one sense, it's like, okay, they've already articulated that they don't have the ingenuity, they don't have the technology to be able to extract that gold. And so being a part or having Russia as an aid to help them, they can take that to their advantage. It's like learning how to play chess. You have to learn how to move the pieces around and play it to your advantage. But on the other end, don't befriend anyone. Because at the end of the day, everyone is going to be looking out for numero uno, and everyone's going to try to get their hands on those resources. So when I look at what Putin is doing, probably he is the best ally at the moment.
Yeah.
And in hopes, like most of us do, that he will be used by the Most High to build up what's going to later become for us. Okay, so because we don't have the resources, and quite frankly, many African nations, they're even hostile to us. They don't trust us as a people, and I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it has to do with the fact that they look at us as though we're from the West, and they have this imagery of us that is one that causes jealousy or what the issue is, but they're less trusting of us. We're like, okay, well, we're all melanated, we're all going through the same struggle. But we're
the same people.
Right. But they will give their energy to a European, and they will give their respect to a European faster than they would to us, most of them, any day of the week. So I say, let the Most High use Putin. Go ahead, let him use him to extract that wealth and to build it up for us. And then he can deal with our heart issues so that we can learn how to work together as a people.
Could it be that they are accustomed to the Europeans buttering their bread, whereas we're not really in a position to butter their bread? So they're like, well, a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Right, it could be, but it's something that Jacoba brought up earlier about the missionary mindset. It's like they have positioned themselves for hundreds of years now as the Great White Hope. the white savior complex. So they come in and they always present themselves as though they are there to assist, they're there to help. And it's only now that we're getting a chance to really see that, you know, so much of these quote unquote missionaries, that they had sinister practices and they worked on behalf of their governments to steal land, to steal minerals and resources and precious material, precious metals. So only are we now having the books open, our eyes opening to all of the detrimental things that have taken place on the land. But they're still conditioned to believe, because even when I was a part of Assemblies of God churches, they had the majority of their missionaries, 97% of their missionaries were Europeans.
White. Yep, they're white.
They wanted us to give them the funding to go out there and do what they did, but they were not extending the hand for Black missionaries to go out there to Africa and be a representation to their own people. So yeah, they're conditioned.
Well, but I look at this in terms of Uganda, and let's just be real. Let's be honest. This is an honest conversation, so we have to be honest with ourselves. How many people are in the awakening that actually have a position to help out our brothers and sisters in an actual position to do a great amount of service, right? We're not just talking about feeding people or things of that nature. We're providing industry, providing any type of something that's self-sustaining, self-actualization, things of that nature. And the reality is we don't have that here. We don't. So really, we're a very captive audience, and our captivity has us finally looking outside of the fishbowl that we've been in, and we're realizing that the other fish are on the hibachi. But we're still in the fishbowl, but we still see the other fish, you know, right, getting ready to get skewered and things of that nature. Now, in terms of Russia, look, there's no bones about it. There's no bones about it. Traditionally, you don't have a system of, I would say, Western European colonization that has been fomented and that's in practice to this very day. You never had that system with Russia, and their system has always been to provide, you know, what it would take to break any type of Western European or Western government support. You see that in Africa, and you also see it in, I would say, South American, Central American countries. You've seen that. So it's not just, you know, an Africa play at that with Russia, but I understand in terms of the amount of distrust that obviously these other countries would have, because let's just face it, whatever gets thrown up in their face, whatever sponsored by any type of U.S. government or other Western governments that they gladly give a visa on over to, right? You know, it's probably in the intent doesn't meet, right, what they're trying to say is their heart. And that's really the saddest thing that we have in this. But the weapon that we do have in terms of tools that we have is being able to talk, is being able to speak. And see, a lot of these things we take for granted how powerful our voices are. And our voices are very powerful. We reach globally. Just don't think just because we're here and we don't get the amount of reach back, right, to our spaces, doesn't mean that we don't have a global influence. And I would argue that we have a bigger global influence than we could even hope to establish. Because think about this. If you're doing good in the US and your influence is doing good, then guess what they'll do? They'll try to shut down your channels. They'll try to monetize or demonetize your channels. They'll try to put agents and everything else in your comment section. They'll try to do everything to blow up your channels as best as they can. Yep. Because you want to know why? Because you're now having a reach and an impact that they are not accustomed to. And they're really not accustomed to this. So now when they're trying to say, well, how do we get in Africa? And we're like, we're pointing the finger. See. Now they're embarrassed because now we're saying, what are you doing there in Africa? And now even the mainstream, which is a lot of their Boule folks and other satellite folks, they're even pointing the fingers, and it's like, well, you're Boule, but you're still pointing fingers. Yeah, but it's too obvious now, you know?
So, do y'all think the answer? Because I think about this sometimes that the awakening of the continent is high priority, right? Because if they wake up from Christianity and Catholicism and all this foolishness, Islam, and understand that they're the chosen of the Most High, I think that will bring the unity that they seek, right? What do you all think of that?
Well, I mean, I think the awakening is important. I mean, we're spiritual people. The Negro is spiritually, genetically drawn to the Most High, whereas it appears the rest of the world is not, right? But I want to address a Stepping Stone to Holmes' comment about the leadership being told not to allow us to stay in Africa. I expected that. I knew that would be the case. The problem, what has happened is that we are effective, as Karis was saying, right? Our voice is reaching the people, and the people are starting to wake up, maybe slowly, but they're starting to wake up. And the more of us that return, they get to hear a different side. So, like in the past 2 years, you would see Emmanuel Macron from France going to Africa, or speaking to the African youth, and he told them, "Well, you're the future. You have an opportunity to call the shots now." He didn't say that in a positive way. He just acknowledged the situation is that in the future they're going to call more shots. So what they want to do is position themselves to remain in favor of the people on the continent, right? And this is why you hear that even from Biden, they call themselves our partners. We're partners. We have common interests. We help you, you help us. While I see you living like a king, and I see my people can't even have a home and some air conditioning and some food on the table, and you call me a partner. If you a partner, I don't want it, right? That's what our people have to realize, because they're getting scraps. Not only are they getting scraps from the masses table, right? They're getting their own scraps from their own land, from their own food, given back to them. The leftovers, they're getting the leftovers from their own assets, their own resources. So it's like they haven't fully awoken to the idea of how these European powers move against Africa. Not just Africa, really all the non-European nations. I mean, the colonization colonized Vietnam, Taiwan, every place, Hawaii. They've overthrown just about every sovereign nation globally, but they were the most heavy-handed against our people in Africa. So
Let me ask y'all. Go ahead, Sister Sean.
I was gonna say the thing that we have to understand about their strategy is that it starts with character assassination. Yeah. So if you can assassinate the character of an entire people group, which they've done really well, then you're going to be able to control that people group. I mean, y'all remember when we were growing up and we'd see the commercials, just for 5 cents a day, less than a price, a cup of coffee, you can help a little African boy and girl.
Exactly.
Elongated bellies and flies falling all over their face. So they presented the symbolism for us. That was for us, so that we wouldn't have any interest in the land.
Yeah.
Okay. But then they have these conferences, like we saw that you shared with the TEDx, and they talk about what's really there among themselves. So at the same time, because I speak to my friend EBA Anita, shout out to her in Nigeria, and she talked about, she talks a lot about how the imagery that was presented to them about us is though we are hyper wealthy here in the West. We're living large, but then They want what we have, so then they come over here to America, and as soon as they get here, the same way the U.S. Embassy tells them, hey, listen, you don't want to deal with black folk here, these black Americans, because they're actually shiftless and lazy. So it confuses them. So it's all a game of mental strategy. So if you can assassinate the character of the African to the so-called African American, and you can do it in reverse, then none of us can ever really truly work together. So when it comes to the awakening, it's going to have to be something that we remember. It's going to be the Most High's doing. It's not going to be us, because in the same way he was able to wake us up and help us to see past our slumber, our religious slumber, because many of us were in deep religious slumber tied to the Eurocentric doctrine. He's going to have to do the same for them so that they can stop having offenses and bitterness towards us based off of the character assassination of their true enemies.
So let me ask you, Brother Karras, what you think of this comment here? All black people with money are not bought and paid for. Yes, some are, but there are a lot who worked hard and are trying to help our people. We have to stop this. We need to discern who to trust. Now, my opinion is this, right? And take it for what it's worth, because I'm not a rich person. But I do know rich people. And I find that many rich people are caught up in the matrix of Babylon, because that's where they get their wealth from. And their idea and their focus is on making Babylon great, right? Or financing a destroyed community, right? A destroyed black community, let's say, right? That our hope is not in Babylon, right? There's literally no idea of investing in Africa. There's no idea of the unity and strategically taking our money and occupying our place slowly in the continent, right? Because our money goes far and on the continent. Taking that money, investing them in community programs and all that stuff is useless. I mean, what's your thought of this, Karen? What do you think about that?
Well, I'd like to just kind of give a caveat to that, and as you had stated, the whole system, especially if money's not bad, right? And I'm not saying like you can't be blessed, but I'm going to tell you the reality is that those that have been blessed in this system, there is a give and take that they didn't realize that they were being involved in, right? And so again, yeah, it's a self-interest that they're going to want to keep this system in play, for whatever they can do and however they can do it. And you're correct. If that's the goal, to try to heal Babylon, right? We would have healed her, right? But the problem is it's like this. You're somebody in excuse me, in antebellum slavery, right? In that time, in the 1860s, maybe we'll say 1850s, but you got your papers. You got your papers. And everybody else is still on the plantation struggling. Now, I'm not going to get mad at you because you got your papers, but chances are you're not going to be calling out, right, everything that's been happening on the plantation, especially if you're able to get your papers from massa, right, to make it on out of the plantation. So that same concept goes on with this time, because here's the thing. We do have a lot of people that go on over as representatives to this system, not trying to change anything within the system, but literally to try to promulgate the system. And that is where the distrust comes from, because in the system, in order to get ahead, you understand there are things that people do not want to do, especially if they are pushing you to the forefront of any agenda that they have for you to accomplish. So what I'm saying is, for us that do not have those agendas, that are trying to do things in a righteous order, you're always going to have blowback. Because why? Because anything you do, even just talking about this, is going against the system of Babylon. So as you begin to understand, and they've understood it, it's just that they're in the land with the resources, and it's a different dynamic that they deal with than us. We have the resources of what? Of making this place, however it's supposed to be in order to make them comfortable, right? Anything that, right, they tell us you need to vote because why? Your vote counts because your vote's to make it comfortable. No, we don't. We just need to get disengaged and worry about us and see the system crumble, which is what they're seeing happening. That's why they're begging us, go to the polls, vote. Well, you should have voted this. You should have had that. Trump was your fault. All of these different things. But now we're understanding that as soon as we're leaving them alone, these curses that had been placed on us is going back onto them because we're no longer putting ourselves as either a willing or an unwilling participant in that system.
Yeah, I used to wonder why the very rich entertainers like Bill Cosby and them never really effectively helped the community, right? And like some of the rich rappers and things like that, why they never really invested in our community. And I know why. Because they understand that once you start trying to help the Black community in America, right, the FBI is coming after you, right? They're going to investigate you. They're going to look into your finances. They're going to get you for something if you try to help your people. So long as you don't try to help the Black community, they'll leave you alone. You can be rich. You can have your mansions and your other lands. But as soon as you try to help your own people, they coming for you. Ask Bill Cosby, ask George Foreman. See, George Foreman, they're coming after him now. He should have took his money. He should have went to the continent and built an empire, right? Because every successful Black person, they are coming for you at some point. Yeah, you might be 70 years old when they come for you, but they're coming for you if you're successful. Minister Tate.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, that's exactly how they maneuver. I mean, if you not only just financial wealth, but political power. If you have political power and you're a righteous person and maybe you serve the Most High, you want to serve your community, they coming for you. That's a guarantee, right? They use their FBI agents to do that. And so I mean that's just the MO. And our people really don't understand the game. They do that also with the leaders on the continent, right? If they don't go along with the game, they take them down, or they finance these rebel groups, right? How you think these rebel groups are getting resources and financing to continue to fight a war against a whole country in Africa? Where do you think that's coming from? It's in the interest to keep the continent destabilized, and it's important for those on the continent to understand how the game is played. I mean, us, the true Israelites worldwide, we have always been in danger.
Yep.
Our ignorance is the only thing that kept us safe, right? So like our so-called mega pastors and our regular pastors, all of them, right? They don't talk because a lot of them actually know the truth, but they want a secure life. So what they do is teach that generic Christian doctrine, right? That doesn't liberate a people, doesn't free a people, doesn't give them hope, except when they die, right? They push that doctrine because it's safe, and they can trick the people out of their money without any worries that the government is going to come after them. But if you start to do what Darby was doing, they would come for you, right? They're going to start looking at your taxes. They're going to start investigating you on the littlest thing. They'll put your name out there on the media and make you defend yourself, even if you're innocent and the most righteous person on the planet. They're going to make you They're going to take your image, put it on the media, and destroy you that way if they can't get you through a legal system loophole. I mean, our people are really in danger, have been. Our ignorance is the only thing that kept us safe. But the awakening is going to be a problem for many of us. It's going to be a problem. Hopefully, the Most High gets us out of here before, they start blowbacking on those of us who decided to speak publicly and honestly about the situation.
Look at what happened to the man who had built the water machine where he can extract water from the air. I think it was during the time of the focus was heavily on Flint, Michigan, and the water crisis there. And eventually, we didn't hear anything from him, and we don't know what happened to him. And it happened to the same way to one young man. I'm not sure which African nation he was in, but he had built some sort of technological advance.
Yeah, he got power from Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Sister Shonda, what happened to the guy with the water? Because I've been wondering what happened to him. If you could,
I've been wondering what's happened to him too. From the minute he came out with his invention, everybody was like, "Y'all better protect him," and they vandalized his machine several times. They said that the issue for them, they said, it's the patent. If you make something, that's one thing. But if you try to get a patent on that thing that you made so that you have total ownership over it, that's when you go up missing. So nobody's heard from him.
Yeah, this is how they do. And as Minister Teyu said, we are in danger, right? Even if you are not an inventor, right, we're in danger. And I'm gonna share the rest of.
Let me say this too.
Go ahead.
Even if you don't believe you're an Israelite, you're in danger, right? The whole UA community, they're in danger, right? I mean, to a degree, unless they're 100% sold, if they're 100% sold to Babylon system, yeah, you okay. But if you halfway woke, you in danger.
Exactly.
The countries in the continent have reserves of minerals worth billions of dollars. Naturally, Africa is hailed as the continent of the future. All big powers, therefore, seem to wonder how to increase influence in Africa, and it seems that Russia has an answer: clean energy. Africa may be resource rich, but it is energy deficient. Presently, all African countries face a serious energy deficit which hurdles economic growth and industrialization despite the continent's unparalleled deposits of natural resources. More than 620 million out of 1.3 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, do not have electricity. Now, Russia seems to be ready to shore up its influence by offering nuclear energy to the African continent. Hi, and welcome to TFI Global, the foreign affairs and geopolitical analysis arm of the TFI Media Group. I'm your host, Shubhangi, and in this video, I will tell you how Russia is investing massively in Africa's nuclear energy sector and how Russian involvement in Africa comes as a major setback to China. Let's begin. The bear is back in the African continent, and it is looking to kick the paper dragon out of the resource-rich region. As the United States phases itself out of Africa, China has tried to rush in to fill the vacuum. However, Russia is now looking to counter Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative in the African continent. Russia's energy diplomacy in Africa has been going on for the past 2 decades. It has made many efforts to help the African continent overcome its energy deficit. Moscow has inked many nuclear energy agreements with African countries ready to adopt Russian nuclear energy. Last year, Rwanda's parliament approved a plan for the Russian state-owned Rosatom nuclear conglomerate to build a nuclear research center and reactor in the capital city of Kigali. Rosatom, the world's biggest nuclear company by foreign orders, has signed similar agreements with Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Zambia. Meanwhile, Ghana, Uganda, Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo too have transacted with the Russian nuclear energy conglomerate. Moscow is presently the only player in Africa when it comes to nuclear energy diplomacy. The United States remains reluctant to cooperate in the civil nuclear projects because the waste generated by nuclear reactors to generate energy is actually used as raw material sometimes for offensive nuclear programs. At the end of the day, the possibility of an African nation developing offensive nuclear capabilities to secure its national security interests cannot be discounted. On the other hand, Russia understands that if it does not invest in nuclear energy in an energy deficient African continent, China will start investing in it. So, Russia is making a big push for helping Africa fuel its next round of industrialization with nuclear energy. And in this process, China is being edged out of Africa's massive energy sector. Russia has traditionally enjoyed a lot of influence in the African continent. In the Soviet era, Moscow had instigated anti colonial sentiment in the African continent by supporting liberation movements to throw out European powers and anti apartheid struggles. Even during the Cold War, the erstwhile Soviet Union offered security and economic assistance to countries like Ghana, Guinea, Mali, Algeria, Ethiopia, Libya, Angola, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. After the disintegration of the Soviet Union, Moscow's influence in Africa waned, while China seemed to spread its tentacles in the resource rich continent. However, Russia is now banking on its traditional influence to revive its presence in Africa. Across Africa, many regimes are turning increasingly pro Russia. Other countries, where pro China regimes are in power, have witnessed military coups over the recent past, often with Russia's assistance. Ethiopia has been growing disillusioned with the US for its alleged involvement in the Tigray conflict. Meanwhile, public support for Russia is peaking, with anti US and pro government protesters frequently spotted waving Russian flags. In Mali, Russia is said to be supporting the military junta, which recently carried out a second coup in a span of 1 year. In the Central African Republic, Russian forces are ensuring people remain safe from the vicious attacks of warlords and militia groups. Last year, Russia disclosed a draft agreement with Sudan to establish a naval logistics base in the Sudanese coast in the Red Sea. Russia is also said to be planning the construction of military bases in the Central African Republic, Egypt, Eritrea, Madagascar, and Mozambique. Russian officials are also eyeing the port of Berbera as a location for their base on the coast of the self declared state of Somaliland within Somalia on the Gulf of Aden. Russia is the biggest supplier of arms to Algeria. It has also struck weapons deals with Nigeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Sudan, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Russia is also strengthening its ties with South Africa. The two countries are looking to collaborate and coordinate at joint multilateral forums like G20 and BRICS.
I'm gonna stop it right there. But if we look at the influence of Russia on the continent, we have to agree that the former Soviet Union, the Russians, the ones who helped liberate a lot of the nations from the oppression of the colonizers from the Western nations. Right now, my philosophy is take it for what you want. I don't trust no white man. I don't trust no white nation. Right? They all lie. They all manipulate. They all want to destroy us. That's what I see historically. I'm going by the history. I'm not going by the individual, mind you, for those Gentiles who are listening who say, well, you're Cobra racist. I'm not talking about an individual person. I'm talking about the nations and their agendas. And their agendas is anti-Negro, anti-Black, anti-African. Take our resources, keep us enslaved, and you can't deny it. You can't deny it. What are your thoughts on this, family? Because, I mean, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? That's how I look at it. And the Bible talks about the four carpenters that's going to get rid of basically those who enslaved us, right, off the continent. The Zechariah chapter 1. What's your thoughts on this?
Immediately, I don't know if y'all caught that, where she said, the bear. And immediately my mind went to the book of Daniel. And that verse in chapter 7, verse 5, and it says, and behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. And I think about where we're at, right now with this whole quote unquote war between Russia and Ukraine, and how Russia is positioning itself as a superpower, as I was saying earlier. And now, if it has the allegiance of Uganda with all of the wealth that it has, then that's just going to make it even more of a bear going out and devouring, because Putin wants to be in control. Putin has always wanted to be in control. So, as somebody said in the comment section, doesn't necessarily mean, based off of this video, that China and Russia are working together. And it doesn't appear so. It appears that he's rogue, that he wants to monopolize, and he wants his turn. So he's going to do what it takes in order to gain the trust of Uganda in order to be able to continue to build Russia up as the top superpower, from my opinion.
I'd say one of the two in this picture is the little horn, right? And so once
you know who I think it is.
yeah. So I mean, and I don't mean the individual as much as potentially the nation itself. Yeah, because we don't know how long it's going to take before the little horn rises fully to power, but we do know that the little horn rises to power after the fall of the woman, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. And then the 10 nations give their power to the beast. So the question is, which one of these is going to be ruling that 10-nation confederacy, that beast system? I know Yakoba think it's Xi Jinping, could be Putin. It's hard to say. Right now, for Africa, I see Xi Jinping as a bigger danger than Putin. But that doesn't mean, Putin is not winning us over through the carrot, right? The carrot on a stick. With the soft touch and a heavy hand later, who knows? But the way I observe Xi Jinping, the way he has treated his people, I think it's foolish for Africa to really trust them too much. But the thing is, they're bringing the money, they're bringing the resources, they're building roads, they're building bridges. My feeling is they're building it for themselves and not for the African people. If I go by the history of Russia, at least Russia has a positive history of helping the Black overcome their oppression. So, I mean, at this point, that's how I see it. Not whether or not Putin is better than Xi Jinping, but as far as the benefits that the African continent gains, it's usually from Russia's help. China's a new player on the block, but China is really dangerous to me because, like I said, when they build roads, they build bridges, they build buildings, they use their own people and their own resources instead of teaching Africans and hiring Africans and showing them how to do the very same thing, meaning they have no intention of sharing knowledge and skills with the African people. That's a problem.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of what Taya was saying. Traditionally speaking, we have had Russia in the continent more than China, really. China's really just been in the continent for the last, I would say, maybe 15, 20 years, if that, as they've been trying to, grow their capacity of business, right, outside of China. But at the same time, you have a lot of things that's going on that Russia is basically putting on the chess moves, and those chess moves have caused a substantial impact, right? And so again, you're not just seeing, when you have national and international discourse, well, if someone's going to be in that discourse, there's going to be a provocateur, right? And so now, when you're seeing a lot of these European nations starting to have discourse, there's going to be provocateurs, just like what you had with Ukraine back in 2013. And those provocateurs were Western funded. So now, now I see this winter as a uh-oh winter, right? But at the same time, what does that mean for Africa? Well, if you now have to have a nervous system, right? Your nervous system is getting basically incapacitated at the central government level. And let me tell you, nobody does anything without that central government. You don't have orders without that central government. So now, if that central government then changes and says, "Hey, you're no longer here in in Africa. You're no longer going to be on this continent. You have new orders to come back to Europe." Well, then guess what everybody's going to have to do? They're going to have to follow those orders, and they're going to have to leave. Because why? Because they won't be getting any type of funding or anything else that will help to keep their mission viable. So all of these things that's going on, this to me is really the biggest checkmate that's happening in history that's being orchestrated and coordinated in front of our very eyes. And again, when you lose comfort, someone's going to lose comfort and somebody's going to gain comfort. And so for Europe losing, Africa is going to gain, and they're going to gain tremendously. And that's what they're afraid of.
You have any comments, Sister Shonda?
No, I agree. I agree. Well put.
Okay, so I'm gonna share this article. I got a few things I want to share, but let me share this. Russia's version of the New World Order is out. The global world order changed significantly after World War II, thereby giving a steep rise to the Western powers. However, the war in Ukraine has once again sparked a shift in the global order. On September 5th, Russian President Putin approved a new foreign policy doctrine based on pitching the concept of a Russian world. According to reports, Russia will defend, maintain, and strengthen the traditions and principles of the Russian world according to its 31-page humanitarian policy. The doctrine has now been adopted as Russia's official foreign policy, although there is one very significant line to draw. Russia's new foreign policy, which is wholly new, declares that there should be very little collaboration with the West, which I thoroughly understand. This new Russian policy doctrine confirms the emergence of a new world order. See, that's the thing about these governments, right? These powerful nations. They all want a world government. They all want a central authority of some sort, and with the idea that nations will keep their sovereignty. Well, if you got a central authority, sooner or later it's going to take over. We saw what happened with the U.S. All right, so Russia, through this foreign policy doctrine, is going to kick off the new world order. Reportedly, the doctrine calls for strengthening links with the two self-declared breakaway states in eastern Ukraine, where fighting is still raging, the Donetsk People's Republic and the Luhansk People's Republic. Moscow furthermore stresses to solidify its links with the Middle East, Latin America, and Africa, Slavic countries, China, and India. Anyone with even a slight knowledge of geopolitics will catch this easily, that all of these regions where Russia places a strong emphasis on fostering connections are also the same ones that have either maintained their neutrality or concentrated on fostering ties with Russia. India, the United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Serbia, and other countries have been among the starkest opponents of the West's diktats to sever ties with Russia in recent years. India specifically has made a significant contribution to the recovery of the ruble after the sanction saga. Additionally, OPEC Plus members from the Middle East, including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, have publicly stated their desire to maintain their relationship with Russia, whereas Russia and China's relations are already known to everyone. Slavic and American connection. Now, I find it interesting, when you talk about the Slavics, right? We're really talking about Gog, right? Gog of Magog, who's going to invade Africa in the far future. I think it's at least 400 to 800 years from now, personally, but who knows? Okay, so there should be no doubt about the fact that Slavic nations, which today are prominently known as the Balkans, have mutually beneficial cultural and economic relations with Russia even before the dissolution of the USSR. In order to foster political and economic relations in the Balkans, countries like Serbia and Montenegro, Black Mountain, Monte, interesting, have continuously encouraged Russian commercial attempts to expand economic and trade ties in crucial strategic areas like energy, banking, and real estate. Russia is now looking to strengthen its influence in the Balkans. This means the intentions of the EU and NATO are in grave danger because Russia wants to counter Western expansion by stepping up its diplomatic efforts in the Balkans. This is the case with Africa too. Russia looks to go lightning fast to destroy the West's influence completely. Wouldn't be too hard to accomplish. Russia is actively filling the void generated by the anti-US sentiments. Russia has increasingly used its historic Soviet connections to expand its political, economic, and above all, military relations with African nations. For years, the world has simply marched around the flag of the West. Everyone followed the U.S. orders without any cross-questioning. However, now the equations are changing. The influence of Russia has now begun to grow. The demise of Western dominance is signaled by this new foreign strategy. I find it interesting that we have this power shift with the Eastern Bloc countries and parts of Asia, which are from all that we can find and understand is that it's associated with Gog of Magog. And so the 10 Horn Confederacy, which is 2 feet, right? 10 toes, 2 feet, East and West power structure. And it seems to me that we see the rise of China, we see the rise of Russia, and the rise of the Eastern foot. Let's say, biblically speaking, the Eastern foot. And so, with that, with the change from the West to the East power structure, we can see why. Okay, the power leaves the West, right, which is what the Horde controls. Right, it goes to the east. Right, we have this 10-nation confederacy, this alliance between the Western power structure and the Eastern power structure, and we can see how, in the end, if we go back, let's say go forward, let's say 400 to 800 years, that by that time, the U.S. isn't going to exist. Africa is going to be a powerhouse, right, a super Africa, as they were saying, and the power will shift to Africa. According to the scriptures, we're going to be wealthier than King Solomon, right? We can see that already. If that's the case, and we already have all the resources, we can also see where Gog is going to run out of resources, and Gog is going to get tired of, going to Africa and say, hey, can we have some coltan? Can we have some gold? Can we have this? They're going to be like, nah, shall we come and take a spoil, right? They're going to come and take a spoil in the far future. What do you all think of this? I mean, it all seems to be lining up perfectly for those who have eyes to see.
Well, according to Ezekiel 38, it appears that those northern powers, those Western powers, are going to have resource issues, and that's what causes them in Ezekiel 38 to come against us while we're sitting at rest in the nation. So we're sitting at rest for what reason? We have comfort, we have resources, we have assets. Things have changed. The table has turned, and so I believe they're going to be struggling for resources. We may be shipping them resources, but not to their liking, not to their what they're accustomed to. And that's going to trigger Ezekiel 38. And where all the nations of the world are going to say, look, those Negroes, those Africans, those Israelites, they have all the resources. What are we going to do? Let's go take a spoil. Right. So I mean, that's what I see happening. Like you said, 400 to 800 years from now. But for now, but today, I think we're on the precipice of the four carpenters liberating us. I do think the four carpenters also make up members of the 10 horn beast. But for now, they're going to be the four carpenters, which are the liberators. But in the future, they'll be part of the invading army.
What's your thoughts on that, Karen?
Yeah, I definitely see that. They're trying to say climate change, right? It's not climate change; it's judgment. But that climate change is going to be, or the judgment's going to be, something that's long impacting to them, which is going to systematically dry up all their resources. If you don't have water, you're not going to have trees. If you don't have trees, you're not going to have lumber. If you don't have lumber, you're not going to be able to build things. If you're not able to build things, they're just going to look stagnant, right? It's going to look like back when their medieval type time periods, that they can kind of go places, but in terms of how they get there, and what they have to offer, well, of course, it's going to be very, very limited. So if they have nothing to offer, then what are they really going to get in return? And obviously, scraps. So this is now very pivotal, because then what will they be able to offer themselves if all they have to offer is just scraps? Well, they got to offer themselves. They got to actually offer their human capital, right? They're going to have to offer their servitude and things of that nature, which is why they do go into captivity or slavery of some functional design. However, during that time, when we come back, and I'm not sure of the mechanisms of how we come back, we're going to be coming back. But when we come back, we're going to be coming back with knowledge of how to handle different things that we had been presented with in our captivity. And that is going to help the other stick to be able to understand this is how you handle the resources. See, I believe all of the posturing and everything else that Russia's trying to do is all going to be for our benefit, because that is what they're seeking, that is going to help to provide that Silk Road 2.0 or whatever campaign of economic venture that they want to do. But it's not going to basically fall in line to the plan of what they have, because I believe that that's when the Most High kind of throws a skew into things, right? And then it becomes in our hands whether they like it or not. Now they'll still have to be quote unquote amenable to it, but they're going to look at that as, well, they deceived us. Look at what these black folks did when they got back into the land. And then we're going to be saying, no, we were always the people, we're the house of Israel, and now we're firmly in control of everything. Now, if you want to deal with us, then you can deal with us. But at the same time, what is it that this place will lack? Really nothing, because we'll have the resources for technology, for infrastructure, right? Military capabilities. Because why? Because that's all the things that we're going to be bringing with us out of Babylon. So we can reconstitute everything for protection and innovation in our hands. And guess what? It's not going to be a limit to that.
So what's your thoughts on this, Sister Shonda?
As y'all were talking, I had to step out for a minute, so I didn't get to hear everything, but I heard you were saying about the transference of power from the West to the East. And so my mind immediately went into the thoughts of the amount of bases each of these superpowers possesses on the continent. So we all know that America, I apologize, my son's in the background. We all know that America has a lot of military bases in the continent. But when I looked up, Russia has, probably about half the amount of bases that America has. And then China also has a significant amount of bases that are there on the continent. So when I think about the time frame and how the transference of power from the west to the east, how long it would take, and the fight, the grab, the pull for power in Africa, I do see it as being something like, if we just look at it from a naturalistic point of view, it is something that's going to take a long time in order to draw the West completely out of the continent in terms of having the ability to fight and vie for power over the continent, versus seeing it from a supernatural perspective, where the Most High can do it overnight. You know, he can literally change the trajectory overnight. But looking at it from a prophetic standpoint, I think that it's gonna be a time period, because you still have the U.S. has so many bases on the continent that they're able to withstand at this point any type of interference coming from the east on that level. And that's why I think that Putin is trying to set up the strategy to work with Uganda in order to build up his ability to have his infrastructure in place on a higher level than the West. So it's all a game of chess and strategy for me. But I hope I answered the question correctly, because I did have to step out. So I apologize if I didn't.
Yeah, definitely. And the strategic positioning and perceived battles, or whether they're financial, economic, and political, between Russia, the U.S., and China, could very well be as well. Like I believe a lot of stuff is scripted. Could very well be orchestrated, let's say, by the power structure to force us into one or more camps, right? So they know we would never align with the West, right? Because they're our colonizers, our abusers, our rapers, all this stuff, right? So they could easily be using them to force us to either align with China, so because we're not going to go with the West, or to align with Russia, but they all under the control of the same people who enslaved us, right? But the only difference I have with that theory is the fact that the Soviet Union and Russia has always been there to help Africa, right? In some form, maybe they had some self-interest, but even when it came to the scramble for Africa, they weren't involved. Now, some people say, well, it was too hard for them to get there and control it. Well, maybe not. I do know even during the Civil War, right? Russia was involved with helping us out in terms of getting delivered. So I don't know. I mean, because I see in the future as well that Russia may be Gog of Magog, or it could be China that's Gog of Magog, right? Somebody's going to say they want our gold and our silver and our goods and all that stuff from us, right? The people who came back from being dispersed amongst the nations as slaves. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's clear, if you look at history, that China was created, right? China was made into a superpower. And Truth Unedited, he did a good video covering some of that, about how the Western powers, were involved in, the creation of China. I mean, he didn't fully get into how all of our manufacturing was brought over there, right? I mean, you don't move your strategic assets like manufacturing to a enemy nation, or even if they're not an enemy nation, you don't move your strategic assets to another nation that's going to, in the long term, affect your nation's ability to be on top. But what they did was, they moved all their manufacturing, all their knowledge, all their training, all the tools to generate all the modern technologies and things we need for a modern society, which instantly made China a superpower. So they had every intention of making China a superpower. This was not some organic creation. China didn't do it on their own. It's that cabal, right? That secret society organization that runs the world. They created China. So it seems to me that would give a thumbs up as to who more than likely is the little horn, or Gog and Magog, which appears to be, China sits a little higher than Russia as far as that, because it's clear that China used to be like Africa. and the one percenters decided they're going to make China into a first world nation, and that's what they did within what 50 years, turned them into a superpower, and now this superpower is supposedly an enemy. As Minister Yacoba said, a lot of this is scripted. It's more, this chess game is against the human beings of society, and I don't think all the people or the entities involved are human, because the chess move is against mankind. It's not just against Israel, it's against the planet, right? If you look at it. And so, you know, China was clearly created for a purpose. So I would say keep an eye on them for sure.
I agree. I mean, China is the red dragon. So, you know, it ultimately, when it comes down to it, if you just look at the technological advances, you look at the Big Brother, the social credit system, all of that, China was the springboard for all of that. And now, from what my understanding is that now Africa, I'm not sure which nation specifically, but they're looking at Africa to make a lot of these advances in technology, like the metaverse. They're pushing that in Africa. So, you know, even I think they said the cobalt in the Congo for the electric cars. Okay, they're using Africa as a means to push into this new world order. So they have their own idea of what Africa is going to look like, what it's going to be used for. And of course, it's for the sinister practices. And I agree with you, Minister Teu, that Africa, I'm sorry, that these people, these powers that should not be, ain't exactly people. We can't all assume, because this is a spiritual battle. It's for the soul of Yasharal, but it's also for the soul of the world. I agree. But they have their idea, their imagination, that they're going to be able to use the red dragon. The red dragon is going to be able to use the continent, if you will, to push this satanic metaverse technology to control the entire world. And I don't believe that the Most High is going to allow that to happen. And I believe that he's allowing us to be the underdog. He's purposely, intentionally allowing us to not have infrastructure put in place, not have resources, not have the unity that we need at the moment, so that he can get the glory. It's no different than the first captivity in Egypt. Okay, Moses was the prince of Egypt, but at the end of the day, he put him on the backside of the wilderness for 40 years and gave him nothing because he wanted the glory. So at the end of the day, he's setting the situation up so that we can't then turn around and think that we ourselves were the ones who turned the continent around. But he used us through his superpower in order to do so and turn it away from the systems of this world.
Yeah, we're going to have to get Stepping Stones on here to talk about some of that stuff happening on the continent. You know, we got to discuss all of this stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that's going on that basically isn't good for us, which is, you know, as you all were saying, it is good that we have not become as advanced technologically, because Africa will be one of the few places that has some level of freedom once the full totality of the satanic world government system comes into place, because Africa's not, you know, don't have all the interstate highways and, you know, drones and tracking systems in place. So that's a good thing, right? You know, the rest of the world, they call them first world nations. Yeah, they're going to have drones. They're going to have robots, right? Those robots are going to be pulling you over, giving you tickets, right? Forcing things into you and all that kind of stuff, if you know what I'm talking about.
But do you see the things they're trying to introduce to Africa, though, right? The metaverse technology, the AI technology, those are tools of control, right?
Yeah, but guess what? Only the ones who already have the infrastructure, right? Like South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, you know, a lot of the major cities will probably have that. You could still
but what if it's just planning ahead, where they know they can't hold back the technology much longer, so they're trying to put in place this technology for control? I'm not saying they're going to succeed.
I mean, I'm sure that's what they're trying to do, but it's not going to succeed, because they're having problems with them accepting pronouns, right? So if you're having trouble with them accepting pronouns, they're not going to accept all of your New World Order, right? Africa's still pushing back.
Yeah,
Every single
all
one of
I'm
those
saying
nations.
is put a flashlight on these guys, a spotlight that shows that what they should be introducing, if they really were trying to help Africa, is the technology to build roads, the technology, to manufacture plumbing pipes, efficiency in harvesting food, right? Modern tools for growing vegetables and raising animals. All the technology, the advanced technology that the Western powers have for food security, we should. This is what they should be giving us, right? But when they're giving us stuff like metaverse technology and AI technology, I'm just saying it's clear that they want that technology in there because that will put us to sleep, or we'll be lost in the metaverse, and that'll be like being addicted to crack, right? And so we'll be controlled that way. I mean, that's the plan. I'm not saying they're going to succeed because according to scripture, Israel going home,
Yeah.
right? But I'm
And,
just
and
saying what their
Israel's going to
motivations.
prosper and succeed.
Yeah, they're going to fail at that, but I think this is how they tend to maneuver, right? They'll give you stuff that you think is good, but it doesn't help your people in the long run, right? We need food security and stability, right? We need some technology to make harvesting food and building homes and introducing modern plumbing, clean water. We need all of that. They're not giving us those things.
Yeah, but we also need to go back to the standards of the Most High, and make sure that when we grow our food, we only let the land rest for 7 years and stuff like that. Sister Sean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I agree with your assessment, Minister Tayu, because it goes right along the lines of the West philosophy. That you'll have that you'll own nothing and be happy. If I could sell you on digital real estate, if I could sell you on these ideas that you're somehow going to that be involved in this be a zombie in this technology world. That's why they have to have a grasp on Africa, because of the fact that it has most of the world's natural resources in it. But if I can convince you that having a fantasy world is more in your more to your liking than being able to set up real infrastructure for you, then I have won. And so that's, to me, I see that as the goal, that is the plan, because they just want a world of slaves. Once they get their first initiative done from the Georgia Guidestones, they want the rest of us to be slaves. And so at the end of the day,
That's it. That's it.
What better way to control us than through their technology and their AI advancements? And so that's why they're pushing that on the continent versus building up the infrastructure. But as you said, Minister Yacoba, that we have to, as the Most High does this supernaturally, because I believe it's only going to be Him that's able to turn this whole situation around. We have to get back to doing it His way, letting the land rest, allowing Him to teach us, because the truth is that most of us don't know how to be how to love the land, how to appreciate the land. We're just starting to get into gardening again, but that's because we're seeing the signs. We're seeing food shortages and insecurity. But before, we were just as attached to this Babylonian system of thinking. So He's got to reprogram our minds so that we can learn how to appreciate the earth that He has prepared for us once again. And that's why I think all of this, how it's going to be His doing, just like the awakening. It's all going to be, ultimately, it's going to be His doing. We just have to be obedient to the direction that He's leading us to go, because He has a very specific plan for us, particularly those here in the West, because He wants us to be able to utilize the things that we did learn while we were in the West for the betterment of the continent when He brings us there.
Any comments, Brother Karras?
All right, well, I wanted to say something about that metaverse is not going to work in Gambia. Today, you don't have advanced electrical systems. It's coming, right? It's coming. So they're concerned how they're going to deal with you when you get stable electricity. They're going to bring that technology in, right? They know, from what I understand, Gambia pays for the electricity from, I think, China or something like that, and the electrical grid is sitting on barges off the water. So at any time they could disconnect Gambia's power and put them in the dark ages. But I think that's going to change, and because a lot of the people are waking up. The internet has hurt the cabal, but I guess it's an important tool for the cabal in the future. So they have to have the internet, but it has hurt them, and so uh, they know the stable electricity is coming. So the next phase would be, well, how do we control the people and make them fall back to sleep? Well, that might be the metaverse.
Brother Karras?
Yeah, I really do believe we do kind of we short sight ourselves in terms of the technologies that we'll be able to bring to the table. And that does scare them because of what we are able to innovate and what we're able to produce. So even though they may have the electrical grid, we're going to have people that's going to be able to do electricity out of Wi-Fi or radio waves. We're going to be able to produce water out of air like we've had with Moses West inventions and things of that nature. We're going to be able to have hydrogen powered cars. That's real clean energy. There's a lot of things that we'll be able to produce that we won't have to fearfully try to keep undercover, but we also have the mind of being able to provide manufacturing, which is what a lot of us have done here in this country. We know how to get into an assembly line. We know how to get heavy machinery done, and what needs to be done to put in code for other different things that does reproduction, technological reproduction. We know how to do these things. We know how to put things in boxes and ship them on out. We know how to have a logistics functionality with trucks, with gas, and with other types of services. The only person that we're stopping is just ourselves, because the Most High has already given us all of this knowledge and understanding and insight that we could literally go leaps and bounds, not within 100 years, not within 50 years, not within 20 years, within 5 years, with us just being let off the chain of white supremacy. I mean, let's just be honest. With us just being let off the chain with white supremacy, in less than 5 years, we would be changing the whole face of the world.
All right, so I got a few more videos, clips I want to share and get your opinion. They pretty much are the same guy, but certain sections of the video.
Africa is weak, so that even this magnificent edifice, I suspect, has not been erected by Ethiopian engineers. When I see the signage in Chinese, I suspect it is the Chinese. That is how weak we are. That is the reality of our mother continent. It is because we are politically weak, we are economically weak, socially we are disorganized, culturally and spiritually we are confused. That is the continent in which we are today. And the question, therefore, what would we do continentally in terms of trade? In 1980, under the Lagos Plan of Action, and some of you have been ambassadors, some of you, you are now serving cabinet ministers, you will grapple with this on a daily basis. Under the Lagos Plan of Action, Africa sat down in Lagos.
Are you a coach, consultant, author, speaker, service provider, or thought leader, and you want more?
And said, we are going to improve trade amongst ourselves. 1980, Lagos Plan of Action. Did we do it? No, we did not do it. We did not do it because the European Union was instead engaging us under the African Caribbean, the Lomé Convention of 1975, or the Cotonou Convention of 2000. Africa remains the only continent which is described as Anglophone.
All right, I'm gonna pause it right there. So what do you all think? I mean, in terms of Africa and its inability to become unified, right? I mean, we have the African Union, we have Chimbara Cole. She's trying to unite the diaspora with the continent, but nothing really takes off, and we know why, right? Because of assassinations, overthrow of certain governments within the continent. Most of them probably scared, right? Same thing with Ethiopia right now, dealing with the influence of the West in Tigray. We understand that what's happening right now is the Western power structures keeping us divided and from unifying. And I forgot the guy who's the head of the AU right now, the African Union right now, or the representative of the African Union. He's pretty much of like Pastor Kelly say, a hopping Bob, right? He's pretty much a
Definitely.
hopping Bob.
Something like
And,
his name is like Perez or something like that. Or
yeah, something like that. That sounds familiar. Perez. Yeah, that sounds maybe that. But he he's a raccoon, and I don't. It's it's, let's put it this way. It's at a dire situation that if the Africans, and I'm talking about the Hebrew Israelites, I ain't talking about the ones who are Canaanites and Hittites and Perizzites and all these ites and stuff. I'm talking about the Israelites. If Israel don't wake up soon, and the ones on the continent and the ones in the diaspora, we're done. Right? This is a matter. Our continent will be taken over. Our resources will be taken over, and the rest of our people, who, if they don't die, they're gonna be hijacked and jacked up into the metaverse. Right? This is where they want to go. Right? And as you notice with the quote unquote plagues, where people getting certain things on their skin, now we're the face of that. We were the face of COVID. Now we're the face of that. Right? And so it never ends, right? When you look at this maneuvering, we're always the target. We're the indirect targets, even of this war between the West and Russia and Ukraine. It's all circumventing the system so that they can create this totalitarian system so they can easily persecute and take us out. This is my opinion. Right? So understand this, that the African Union is not going to happen organically, in my opinion. I could be wrong. The Most High has to do a miracle. What do you all think about that?
I agree 100%. Here's the thing for me. The colonialist mindset has been the same from the very beginning. Divide and conquer. When you look at Africa, we have been a very tribal people. And because of our disagreements and differences culturally, based off of family, based off of heritage, we have allowed that to cause a rift so that the colonialists can come in and they can take over. To this day, it is spiritual. To this day, you still have an ununited Africa because we are not understanding collectively as a people spread in the diaspora and on the continent that it is our lack of being unified and putting aside our differences that keeps us under the rule and thumb of colonialist powers. Now, at the same time, we have to understand that they have their way of their philosophy of life. They have their way of building economy, building infrastructure. They have their languages. They have all these things that they told us was the gold standard. And because they told us that was the gold standard, we're all trying to elevate to that gold standard level. They told us that we were savages. But before we were savages, we were building whole civilizations. So they played with our minds and making us still feel as though we were weaker and as though we had to war with one another. And because of that, to this day, we are in a spiritual lock. And it's going to take the power of the Most High to break the spiritual lock and chain off of us collectively. But it draws me right back to Ezekiel 20. Because the truth of the matter is that the majority of our people, whether they're throughout the diaspora or even on the continent, have so much of a Babylonian mindset, believe in the philosophy of the oppressor so much that he's going to have to separate them from the camp, if you will. He said he's going to purge the rebels out from among us, because it's trying to convince your people that we need to work together. That's one of our biggest hurdles, because we have been mentally mind warped. And so we can, when we get to that place where the Most High is able to deal with us on that level and change our physiology, change the way we think, change everything about us, so that we can get back to that place where we're unified, then we can build those civilizations again. Not on the basis or the philosophy of the colonialist, but on the basis of what the Most High considers the best, which is the best.
I would say we need a generation that's not raised under colonial influence. I think that's the underlying problem of unity. We don't know the ways of the African people or the Negro, right? We've done lost that. Even on the continent, their gold standard is European Western living standards and lifestyle, which is an abomination before the Most High. But it's all we know, and we're striving for the crumbs off the master's table instead of realizing that we're kings and priests. And so, if you look at a lot of nations in Africa, they wear the British white wig in the judicial system. That alone shows you there's a huge problem on the continent when a Negro is wearing a long female gray wig just because the colonizer taught them how to do it. If they were truly liberated, they would have cast off all of these things, right? And the same thing with the school system. They're raised in the Catholic Church school system, and our people have been miseducated. So we need a generation that we can raise and teach them the truth, and then that generation will be free to think independently.
And that's why it goes right back to what we were talking about at the start about that young man. That's what they do. They train their youth from young. And of course, I'm not talking about all white people, because all white people are not like this. Many white people are just as mentally warped as we have been under the system. But it's the elites who have been training their youth from young in order to continue in the colonialist mindset. They change everything. They change every marker, every ancient stone, to the point where we don't even have a foundation. We don't know anything. And we try to grasp at information to build ourselves up, because we know there's greatness in us. We just don't know how to access that greatness. And it's going to take the Most High himself in order for us to access that greatness, because we have been gaslighted by total narcissists that have taken us to a place where we don't even understand how amazing the Most High constructed our being. And if we work together, because they already understand it. I think Ronald Reagan was talking about back in the 80s, an alien. What if an alien force came in? We will be able to put all of our differences aside. We are the alien force they're talking about. We're the ones that they're talking about. They don't want us to be able to be who we're called to be. So they do everything that they can in order to mentally warp us and sell us on their dream of what richness is, of what highness is. But it's like comparing a dime to a diamond. To a child, a child's going to go for the dime because it's bigger, not understanding the value of a diamond. But that's who we are. We're diamonds, and the Most High is going to have to do the work in order to break us out of that dirt mindset so that we can shine collectively as a people.
Yes.
I definitely look at that. It's a blessing to be in this awakening. It's a blessing to come back to our remembrance. But I also believe, even though it is a blessing, it's kind of one of those. It's in the long term, it is a blessing, but the benefit isn't really going to be reaped in our generation per se. It's going to be reaped in the generations that come after us. And I think a lot of folks want to come into this awakening thinking that, well, we now know it, we now understand it. Look, the Most High is going to bless us, and that's that, and we're going to be kings and priests and yada yada yada. Well, let me explain this thing to you. How long did it take after Israel had been delivered out of Egypt? Did they have a king? Did they have kings? You see what I'm saying? It started with Saul. And that was still well over 400 years after they had been let out of Egypt. So with us, it's a blessing to see the hand of the Most High move, especially in this time. But I think we have to get in the understanding that this is going to take a few generations for us to really break the stronghold. Even though the Most High is going to be with us, we still are going to be under a lot of Baal and Balaam influences. And that's just how it's going to be until we start getting this right. Now I'm praying that it doesn't take that long, but we still had a lot of knuckleheaded folks, you know. That's the blessing of not having to go back into captivity after this. But as we get it together, we have to really humble ourselves to understand that we have a couple of generations that have to come after us that have to do better, much better than what we have been up to. Okay, because we're gonna have to get rid of witchcraft. We're gonna have to get rid of sorcery. We're gonna have to get rid of all of these divinations. We're gonna have to get rid of a whole bunch of nonsense that we are going to carry on out with us. That's just how it's going to go. And you're right. A lot of it, when we get there, we're going to have to really be the standard. Can we even be the standard? And so these are questions that we are going to continually answer and refine, because this isn't going to be for this generation. We're going to get it right in this generation. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we're going to be perfecting it generation after generation.
So, Sister Shonda, do you see the message on the screen?
Yeah, I see it.
So, you all have the building bridges with the Gentile community. How would you answer this question? What should a Caucasian who follows the narrow path do to follow Yahuwah's children?
Shout out to Brother Karis Copeland, leader of Building Bridges, and the shout out to Building Bridges crew. You know what? I love this question, and to follow the path of the Most High Yahuwah is to first understand that you have to be born again. That's the first thing. Okay, He has established His Son as the only righteousness. There's no righteousness within us apart from Him. But when you love Yahusha, when you're born again and you love Yahusha, that means that you love His people. That means that you do whatever it takes to support His people. And it's according to His word. He says that if you love, He says, love the Most High with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. What's happened with the Gentile nations is that they have been under a delusion that His people look like them, excuse me. And so they've spent most of their time loving the wrong people and hating His true people, treating us like we're the enemies versus treating those who oppress them as though they are the ones who don't deserve their love and affection. And I'm not going to say who those people are because I'm trying to be mindful of your channel. But you have to love His people. You have to listen to what His people's struggles are, and you have to advocate. One of the things that I see when it comes to Caucasians who call themselves believers is they will turn a blind eye to everything that happens to us And there's always the pushing of the goalpost. There's always the hypocritical message whenever we're afflicted in the land of our captivity. Stand up against that. Stand up against that unrighteousness, even if it means that you're going against your own flesh and blood. The thing about being a Caucasian too, who makes the decision to go against their own flesh and blood, who's been raised in the mindset of a colonialist, of a bigot, is that you don't like the loneliness. You don't like the loneliness it brings you. You feel like if I stand up against this this bigotry towards the Most High Yah's people, that my family will turn on me and I'll have no one. Well, if you belong to the kingdom, then you have the kingdom, you have the Most High and his people. His people, whether we are Yasharal or his people, whether we are out dispersed across the world. That's who your real people. He said it. Who are my father, my mother, my sister, my brothers? Those that do the will of my Father in heaven. So you have to adopt that mindset. You have to be willing to let go of the very people who are dragging you into the same bondage that they're going to be held accountable for because of the rejection of the Most High and the Most High's people. So love his people actively. Don't just say it out of your mouth, but actively show love for his people.
For the carers, what would you say? What's your thoughts on it?
Well, to be quite honest, thank you, Sister Shonda, for those words. It is a very hard thing, especially as a Gentile, coming into this truth and coming into this understanding, because you have had a plethora of bombardment of the negative imagery that doesn't necessarily portend reality based off of truth, right? And so there's a lot of untruths or lies that have been spoken over these last 400 years, and these generations that are coming out and understanding that there are lies. Now there's really no one to talk about. How did these lies continue? Why are they continuing? And how do you break the destructive nature of the lie? Well, here's the thing: we don't have to break anything, because the Most High is the one that's doing the breaking. And this is why we have a lot of our Gentile brothers and sisters. They come on in here and they're asking the questions. What do I do? Because I understand I'm living a lie. Now, it's, you don't have to beat up each other. This isn't They Live, right? But you can get the answers by asking. And spirit-filled Israelites, born again, spirit-filled Israelites. And I have to preface that because there are a lot of folks that have that mentality of, well, Christ only came for, the lost sheep and the lost sheep only, and that's that. And it's like, well, have we not forgotten what Isaiah has says, that his house would be a house of what? A prayer, right? For who? For Israel and the Gentiles, those nations. So those nations that are going to participate in that, well, we need to be able to be the light, right? So if we aren't doing a good job of being the light, someone's going to try and step in, and they're going to try to say, hey, that light, this is what you need to do, and this is that, and they'll be led right back into wickedness. And we've seen that before, with affiliates, folks that we've affiliated with in the past, and that's not what we are trying to do. Part of this is actually love, right? If you take time to put yourself on out here, like a lot of us do on this panel, to go on out there daily and explain to both the Israelite and the Gentile what's going on, right? That's the best love, is just explain, hey, get your hand away from the snake, right? Get your hand away from the burning heat. Get away from there before you get ran over by a car. These are the simple things that we have to do to love our brother, right? To speak truth and to speak peace. Because why? Because everything else is going to fall into place. You can say, well, I don't believe it, or I don't think this, or I don't think that. That's fine. And I'm not going to go toe to toe and contend, because here's the thing: the Most High is still on his throne. And these judgments and these plagues and all these things are still moving. So now, as the heat is on, literally and figuratively, droughts coming up, the water's going short. Now people are starting to perk their ears up and say, something's going on. There's some lies going on here. Is it really climate change, or is something really happening? And I have that there. If Ministry of COVID wants to pin that to the comments. Look, if anybody wants to be a part of building bridges, come on out. Come on out. Email me and I'll get you the invite, and you can come and fellowship with us. And this is a fellowship of both Israelites and Gentiles. Nobody's judged. Nobody's, put on the platform, hey, now you need to know what it feels like to be black. There's none of that. Everybody knew their roles. Everybody was under a lie. I can attest to that. I was under a lie of Eurocentric Christianity for decades. Nobody was perfect at this. But now we understand these lies that were instituted on all sides. It takes two sides to keep the lie going. Those that do it intentionally and those that do it unintentionally. And in America, there's a lot of people going into this lie and doing things unintentionally, because we don't understand the manipulation factors and the control factors that have been done to everyone in this. So, yeah, is it frustrating to try to, explain things to our Gentile counterparts? It absolutely is. But don't get frustrated in the process of planting, right? You just have to bury the seed, plant the seed, and let the Most High do his awesome work. It's his finished work that we're all trying to accomplish. Because at the end of the day, these judgments and these calamities aren't just going to turn off and everything's business as usual and we're back at being the heel, right? We're back at being the bottom, the tail. No, this thing is what the Most High said is going to be, and his word never returns back void. So now it's up to us. Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing that I wanted to add is when it comes to being a Gentile, because y'all have, particularly Caucasians, have been taught for a very long time that you are the high IQ people, if you will. And I don't mean this to be offensive, but have a teachable spirit. Like, be teachable, because again, when the Most High is trying to help you to understand the word from the standpoint of true Israel, you can't sit there for half a day and think that you've become an expert on the scriptures all of a sudden. And then you go to become a teacher of Israel. We've seen this too many times.
Yep.
Too many. And it's frustrating for us, because those of us who are born again and who want to be salt and light unto the Gentiles and unto our people, we find that it's the Gentiles mainly who, once they feel an acceptance among us, then begin to want to become Lord over us.
Thank you.
And that's a huge problem. You have to deny yourself. This is a cross you have to take. And so if you take up your cross, have a teachable spirit, be willing to serve, and also be willing to stand up to the wrong behavior in your own community. We don't need you to be out there trying to, be the shepherd over Israel. Okay? Talk to your own people. You don't have to try to educate them on all things scripture. Talk to them about basic practical mannerisms. Talk to them about what's right and what's wrong. Advocate for what's right. Talk about the reality that we are in America a permanent economic underclass, and you should fight for reparations right alongside of us. I know that's too hard for a lot of people to take, But that's how I'm talking about practical love. Be teachable, be actionable in your love.
And one thing I'm gonna say, and this is something I know mostly white Gentiles don't want to hear, right? Separate your wallet, right? Why do I say that, right? Because y'all love mammon. I remember growing up in the Christian church, all I ever heard was those who bless Israel, God will bless. Those who bless Israel, God will bless. And y'all gave millions of dollars to them people. You find out that Israel Negroes, the most you give is pennies. Y'all wrote checks for tens of thousands of dollars to those people over there, right?
Facts.
But y'all didn't stole our land, enslaved us, did all this stuff. The least y'all could do is start giving back to us like y'all was giving to them when y'all thought they were the people, right? That's just how it is, right? I mean, you know, the thing I find is that Gentiles love mammon. That's their God. It's hard for them, especially when they come to giving some of that God money that they have to Negroes. That's a problem for them. You want to see how your heart is towards God's people, and you really want to serve the Most High according to the Scripture. Separate that check, cut out that check. Give to Dry Bones Project. Give to Covenant Awakenings. Give to the buildings. Building bridges. All this stuff, right? There's a bunch of ministries you could give to, right? There's a bunch of them out there. But look, I know I ain't gonna see it because it ain't
714 movement.
Yeah, 714 movement. You know, but I know I ain't gonna see it. You know why? Because y'all can't do that to black folks, right? Because y'all can't see us succeed. Even those who know who we are, it's hard for y'all to separate from that, right? Because the money is your God. You know, that's just how it is. Money answers all things, don't it? Right? It answers all things. You want to help us answer some of them things. You know what I'm saying? Some of our people, you know, having trouble buying food. Some of our people having trouble paying rent. You know what I'm saying? You know, y'all, and guess what? It's y'all fault. Y'all created this system. Y'all built this off of the back of our ancestors. And now when it comes time that y'all know who we are, guess what? The most you do is acknowledge it because it don't cost you nothing. You know, separate from that check out your wallet. It'll cost you something. It's going to hurt you. That's what I'm saying. Any comments on that, Sister Shaka?
No, 100%, because quite frankly, there's so much that we could do, so much we want to build. I mean, even when I look at building bridges, we have goals, we have plans of things that we would like to be able to do for our people. But, you know, we have such limited resources. And when it comes to the 714 movement, I appreciate you calling that out, Minister Tayu, because, you know, that's a prayer network that we're trying to build. We're trying to build that worldwide, so that all of y'all's people are collectively praying together. But so many of us are just trying to deal with the day-to-day functions of life, trying to keep the roofs over our head, trying to keep food on our table. And it's crazy for us to hear about the inflation and hear about white folk complaining about what they don't have when we have been in dire poverty, many of us, for so long. And it's like, that's just a way of life for us. And it shouldn't be that way. Why is it that dire poverty should be the way of y'all's people after you know who y'all's people are? When you know who y'all's people are, you should be saying, hey, let me pour in. Let me put, let me position myself to be able to give and give freely. Stop worrying about whether or not you're going to be able to get it back on your taxes. I can't stand that. It's like, oh, well, can I write this off of my taxes? Why are you so concerned about that? Why? Because it's not given from a pure heart. You don't want to get from a pure heart. You want to receive back. And so at the end of the day, the Most High, if you really trust him, he will be the one that gives back to you. Isn't that what y'all tell us? Right? You tell us to sit in your churches and you tell us to give and give and give and give, and that the Most High will reward us. But then when we're in need, you tell us, okay, well, just depend on the Most High. But you're not just depending on the Most High. You're coming to us for everything. And so at the end of the day, we're saying that if you're going to love Yah and love his people, it has to be active on all sides. It can't just be this lip service. We don't want to hear another lip service. Even King David himself said, I don't want nothing that I didn't have to come and I had to put something into it. I had to pay for it, because that's how I show that I'm grateful. That's how I show that I have love. So we don't want the act. We don't want the lip service. We're sick of the lip service. Give us active love. Show us active
Exactly.
love.
And right here, AL says, I had to correct a brother who stated reparations are a handout. Reparations are not a handout. It's a debt owed. It is a debt owed. And we coming for our check, like Martin Luther King said. We want it. Y'all gonna give it whether or not you want it or not. I'm telling you, you can resist it all you want. The Most High is written in the scriptures. Y'all gonna pay us back. We gonna leave here with gold and silver and wealth. We gonna get it one way or another. And y'all see all these plagues falling down on America, and some of y'all still ain't repenting. But guess what? We gonna be shown to be His children. According to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, y'all gonna be like, who are these people? Where they come from? These are God's chosen. Or we were deceived. That's what the Bible says. And this is what Sister Shonda says. Y'all need to sit down under us and learn the truth. Move away from Christianity. Do you know how long it took me to move away and not call myself a Christian because I was so under that spellbound, right? That the religious system itself had you thinking you going against God, right? I'm like, this is how it is. This is how we all been brained. You know what? You know what I'm saying? It's a better word than that, but I'm like, that we've been brained. You know what? And we all been deceived, right? So that's my point on it. Minister, tell you, we're gonna have some final comments. I'm gonna start with you, and we're gonna go through the rest of the panel and shut it down because I've been having some browser problems. I wanted to show some other clips, but I've been having some resource issues. So we're gonna start with you, Mr. Tate.
Yeah, I can't really add much to that. Sister Shonda said everything I wanted to say. I mean, in reality, I mean, you have to be led of the Holy Spirit. You know, we as people, you know, don't keep it to yourself. I mean, when people are talking against Israel, you know, speak your truth boldly. You know, I mean, that's where you can at least start, is to speak your truth boldly. Don't hide it under a bush.
Yeah,
Let
don't be a
everyone know.
coward.
Yeah, let everyone know, right? And be bold about it. I mean, it's not right now, it's not popular to ever defend a Negro, aka Israel, right? But in the future, you know, the Most High said what He rewards those who help His people, right? Who give to His people, who protect His people, who defend His people, right? So, I mean, just be bold in your truth and don't keep it to yourself. That's what I would say.
At least as bold as y'all was when y'all thought those other people was, right? No less. Brother cares.
Yeah, thanks, panel, for having me on. Definitely appreciate that. Yeah, there's still a lot of issues we have to resolve as a people, and we know that the continent still has a lot of issues that we have to resolve. But that's why you still have Ezekiel 36 and Ezekiel 37, because it's going to be for the Most High that brings us all together. See, with us being two separated sticks for House of Israel and House of Judah, this is where they're able to dominate over us. However, they know that their time is coming. They know that their time is running short. Who would have thought after these 400 years that Russia would have stepped in the way that they stepped in? Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people. And now we're seeing that today, and we're seeing the land grab that they want to do. But the problem is everything that they try to do will fail because the plans of the wicked always come to naught. Always. So with that said, shalom.
Sister Shonda, final comments.
Yeah, so for our people, the House of Yasharal, I want to say the message that I've been saying from the very beginning. The Most High requires that we get our houses in order. It's the bottom line. That's what He's requiring of us, to spend time in His presence, to spend time in prayer, to spend time as our families, building up the unification of our individual homes that will affect our communities, that will affect our nation at large. That is the responsibility that He has charged us with. It's the same responsibility He charged our ancestors with before they left the captivity. Get your house in order. Now, to the Gentiles, and this is those of you who are not sure who the true people are, but you're wondering if we really are the people. I must put it plain and simple to you like this. Your arms are too short to box with the Most High. Too short. You see, everything that is happening in this world right now is not happening because we're making it happen. It's happening because He is contending for His people. Bottom line. And so if you're uncomfortable, if you're seeing shortages, if it's affecting your paycheck, if you're fearful, understand the way he built us, the way he built you are two totally different ways. He didn't built us for this. He built us to deal with heavy amounts of pressure. But you, on the other hand, you're going to have to understand that if you're not willing to bow the knee to the Most High and submit to his ways, you either fall on the rock or the rock is going to fall on you. So I implore you to, if you love him, as you say that you do love him, then turn away from your wicked ways, repent of your sins, receive Yahusha, and obey his commands. And his greatest commands are these: to love him with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. So you better start loving his people. Otherwise, you're going to face the consequences as those of your ancestors and those of your counterparts around you are dealing with today. Don't play with him. And I thank y'all so much for having me on the panel. It was a blessing.
Thank y'all for coming on, Covenant Awakening, Sister Shonda and Minister Teu for being on. Understand this, sometimes Gentiles don't like to hear the hard truth, right? But you got to understand that it's out of love, right? Because we see what's happening, right? We know what's coming for y'all, right? And we lived a hard life. Our ancestors lived a hard life, but what y'all have coming is going to be harder than what we've gone through. Right. And it's going to be longer than what we've gone through. That's bad. Right. Harder and longer. And so you need to
add to
that. What's that?
Can I add? I just wanted to say, there is scripture that says, count yourself worthy to escape all these things that's coming upon the earth. Right. And you have to ask, well, what does that mean? In my opinion, that means when Israel goes home, some Gentiles go home with Israel. So there's a remnant that understands that they're going to have to leave with Israel, so to escape the judgment. So move away from religion, because religion has been a problem for us, not just Israel, but for the world. Pursue the Most High in spirit and in truth, and you'll be okay.
And understand this: when Yeshua was here, it wasn't popular to be an apostle. It wasn't popular walking around with him and sitting under him and learning with him. Why? Because he taught some things that was contrary to their understanding. And there's some things we teach that may be contrary to your understanding, right? But it's all biblical. And I think that you all need to wake up from the slumber, right? Because what's coming is going to be bad. Now, as I mentioned before, when you want to help someone, you want to be a part of their life, and you say you love someone, what happens with people you love and you want to help? And you help them out. You give them money. You support them. You help them do things, right? The woman with the pence, what? She loved the ministry of Yeshua. What did she do? She gave all she had. Why? Because she loved him. It's the same thing, right? We're all tried. We're all tested to see where our heart is, right? And that's it, right? And personally, and I'm gonna be honest, because that's all I can be, I don't expect nothing from none of y'all. Personally, I don't, right? I mean, I know y'all history. I don't think it's in y'all. Personally, I mean, there might be one or two, but I don't expect nothing. And so I will be surprised to see anything like that. I will be surprised to see anything like that. And it's sort of sad to say this is the way it is. And to align yourself with Negroes, aka the true Hebrew Israelites of the Bible, it's gonna cost you something. Your family gonna look at you like you crazy, right? They're gonna turn against you. And how many Gentiles have we had on here who say they're with us, and then all of a sudden they want to be us and replace us? That's just how it is. I don't expect nothing from y'all. I really don't. I just want to help y'all as much as I can, because I know what's coming for y'all. It's gonna be worse than our captivity. How can that even be imagined? How is that even possible? And you can see it today with the technology, right? You ain't gonna have your own thoughts. You ain't gonna have your own mind. The Bible says in that day, men gonna seek that and that gonna flee from them. How can that be other than with the technology that they have today, right? This is what's going on. This is the future, right? And we're going to be delivered. That's why I'm not scared. I see all this stuff happening. I see the judgments. I see a lot of people about to die by the millions. A lot of people already died, but y'all just don't realize it, and they continue to die because of certain things. But understand what's coming, right? I can't warn you no more. Be honest with you, I'm weary warning you. So once again, thank you, panel, for coming on, and it was a good topic, and hopefully, we get out of here soon with the second Exodus. And please go over to Covenant Awakenings and listen to Brother Karis and Sister Shonda's channel, Shonda at Large, right? And tune in, share this video, give us some likes, support us as a patron, support us Cash App. And also, don't forget we have our backup channel. I'm doing stuff over there as well, right? Which is TAIL, Citizens of Tzion, TSION. And then we have our DC channel. You wanted to say something, Sister Shonda? I thought I saw you on
Oh,
mic.
no, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. So once again, family, thank y'all for listening. Share this video. Peace and blessings, Israel. Your captivity is ending. Love you with the love of the Messiah. And please support the Dry Bones Project.
KW